All right, good evening, everyone. This is the calling the meeting to order of the Cranston City Plan Commission. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for November 4th, 2025. Are there any amendments or changes to the minutes? Okay. Seeing that there are no amendments or changes to the minutes, motion to approve would be in order at this time. Motion made by Commissioner Coop for approval, seconded by Commissioner Barberi. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Okay. Next on the agenda is, I will note that it says subdivision land development projects, old business. Just let everyone know who was at home watching this. Natick Solar has been notice for the December 9th special meeting. So everyone who is interested in that issue, please be sure to be here or online December the 9th, next Tuesday. Next on the agenda is subdivision land development projects, new business. First up is Champlin Hills, an extension request. Is there anyone here who would like to be heard on that matter?
You checked that the microphone. Now it's on. Good evening, Dave Taglianetti with the Capianato Group. Yep, as you mentioned, President, we are here for a as-of-right extension for phase 1 of the Champlin Hills project, which is a 90-unit multifamily development. We have actually filed for our final plan approval. I believe we have the application and all the necessary documents filed. The last piece of information that planning staff is waiting on is a sewer agreement that was negotiated with the city back in 2015. So it's an agreement that we would like to revisit with your DPW and maybe Tatella as well. And we plan to do that right after the first of the year.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a quick question is, my curiosity is, your final approval documentation is here. Do you expect to like be ready to go permit by the end of next year?
Go permit?
Like go start getting permits and stuff. Are you at that stage pretty soon, or are you a little bit
We are
further?
fully permitted.
Fully permitted, so this is just final approval is what you're waiting for?
Correct. We have all of our state permits.
Yeah,
So we're waiting on the final approval
okay.
from staff. I thought you were going to ask when we'll be going to construction.
Okay, well, that could be the second question.
Yeah. I thought that would be the first one. And unfortunately, I don't have, there's many factors that go into when we'll, when we go forward with construction. But we hope to by the spring, summer of next year, go into
Okay.
construction.
Right.
That's the goal.
Okay. And, for the applicant? Okay, all right, unless the staff has anything to say, I assume they have no objection to this extension. That would be a motion to appropriate to grant the extension. Motion made to grant the extension by Commissioner Lanfear, seconded by Commissioner Barberi. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations. We'll see you soon. And
Thank you very much.
along with you, Printworks and a couple other projects, maybe we'll have a couple hundred units next year. You too. Next is for public information, Dunkin' Donuts pre-application concept. Is there anyone here who would like to be heard on this matter?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, or President and members of the board. Attorney Joseph Brennan here on behalf of the applicant. The application that you have before you is for a development. We're calling it the Dunkin' Development. It's technically located at 0 Plainfield Pike, but this is part of the subdivision that had already been approved for the property at 210 Plainfield Pike in Cranston, Rhode Island. So as this property stands today, it's just a vacant piece of land. The applicant is proposing, the main item coming in is the Dunkin' Donuts. If you look at the site plan, that would be the unit that would be all the way to the east on our plan, which is on the top of the site plan for the existing conditions. You can see from this, our parcel is, I think it's labeled parcel 1 on the bottom left. That would be our parcel of use. The total area, we would have the Dunkin' Donuts in the top. Yeah, there we go. The site plan, you can kind of see the little gray shaded areas of the building. The Dunkin' Donuts would be the top unit. Then we would have retail in the middle units there. Depending on, we don't have any tenants ready to go for that. So it depends on who would want to come. There could be a multitude of them, different ones. It could be one big one if it played out that way, or we kind of just had a couple of little dotted lines in there to signify cutting it differently with internal walls that could show another 4. And then all the way to the west on the bottom, we're proposing a restaurant use. We don't know what restaurant exactly would go in, but it would just be a simple restaurant use. The development would have a drive-through through the Dunkin' Donuts. So I think that kind of brings on the discussion of what we're looking for from not just the planning stages that we'll go through, but we'll also be seeking a zone change. We are in the M2 zone, and we're actually going to be staying M2. So we're not going to technically change the zone, but what we're looking to do is to change it with conditions. Those conditions would be to allow for multiple more uses. I don't know if you have that in your packet, but we have been working very closely with the city's planning staff to put together a list of items that would be as part of that submission, a list of uses, I should say, that would be as part of that submission that they believe would still fit within the integrity of the M2 and the proposed use that we're looking to provide here. Because of that, with the schedule, we can meet all the dimensional requirements, but you also have a schedule of uses and intensity regulations. The 2 waivers that we would need from that as part of the approval is just simply the one to the west. You can see our exit only over at the top of the plan, the northwest, because there's a certain distance regulations between 2 driveways. So there's that driveway that's directly to the west of ours that we would be very close to. And then the second one is because the Dunkin' Donuts is an attached unit to us, your regulations don't allow for a you have to have a freestanding drive-through use. So because that building is attached, we'd prefer to leave it that way. But if we absolutely needed to, we could put a 5-foot separation. But we think that the plan in the building would flow better with this proposal rather than having to break it off, and there could be through traffic, people, I just fire rated wall. It just becomes a different type of disaster in our opinion. We have, based on the square footage of the building, we can provide for enough parking spaces based on those proposed uses that we show, with being the Dunkin' Donuts, the retail for the square footage, and then the restaurant at the bottom. We have had initial conversations with Rhode Island DOT regarding our proposal, because just like with your regulations with the 40 feet between the 2 driveways, they would probably have a concern as well. But their initial indications to us, without submitting formal applications, of course, because we're so early, would be that they would actually support this proposal. So that was great and exciting news and a good start for us. As a whole, that really is kind of where we stand right at the moment. If the board did have any questions or any feedback that we could take with us, we'd be happy to hear and attempt to answer. I do have Chris Shea from Dupree Engineering here as well, and David Petrosinelli. He is part of the applicant. He's Mineral Enterprises, Inc. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. I just have a couple of questions, and I'll open it up to others as well, obviously. I didn't see it in the packet, maybe I missed it, but when you talked about multiple uses, working with the planning staff on multiple uses, could you just kind of give me some illustrations of the multiple uses you were talking about?
Yes. So it would first be, of course, all other uses that are allowed in the M2 industrial zone. But then in addition, some that we have listed out would be an artisan workshop studio, a bakery retail, bank financial institution, barber shop, beauty salon. They have listed brew pub, check cashing facility, convenience store, day spa, drive-in restaurant, not a drive-through, drugstore, hardware store, medical diagnostic laboratory, music and dance studio, the restaurant without drive-in facility. Oh, because the drive-in is the Dunkin' Donuts, my apologies. Retail sales, small scale, tavern, pub, neighborhood bar, all following under that bottom restaurant uh, uh, envelope. And then an urgent care facility, veterinarian hospital or clinic. That's what we have listed thus far.
Okay, and then on the multiple uses that you listed, obviously, each of these things have different parking requirements. Would the plan that you have presently provide sufficient parking not only for your Dunkin' Donuts, but also these multiple uses, all of them that you're considering?
Yes, it would, because the parking calculations are based on the type of use and then the square footage of the building. So we calculated it based on that top unit being the Dunkin' Donuts, the
Mhm,
middle units being retail,
mhm.
and then the bottom unit being the restaurant. But if for some reason something were to change, as always, we would apply for a building permit, be denied, and they would have to seek that zoning variance for any relief needed from parking. But based on our plan of Dunkin' retail restaurant, it would fit that.
Okay, and my last question before I turn over to others is, you talked about layers. Are you talking about three separate buildings, three compartments of a buildings, or are you talking about three floors?
No, I was trying to, so like when you look at the gray building itself, you can see there's the top unit, which is the Dunkin' Donuts, and we have it separated by a solid black line. And then in the middle, you'll see the one,
Okay.
two, three dotted lines. That would be an indication that we would have the retail space there, but we wanted to put dotted lines so you could see we're considering maybe up to 4 units. But if someone wanted to come in and take the whole, they could take the whole or 2 of them or 1, 2, 3, you know. And then the bottom one, again, we've got the solid black line because that would be the restaurant area as a designation of uses. We were trying to make it clear.
Okay, no, I understand now, because when you say top to bottom, you're talking about top to bottom on
Just
that
on-
map, not top to bottom as I was envisioning like a multi-story building I was thinking about when you were talking it. So thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Any other questions from my colleagues, Mr. Brennan? Vice Chairman Coop?
Yes, thank you. Can you just, the driveway issue you were explaining, can you go through that again? Is that the one that would be, I guess, on the east?
Yep, the one where the red dot what just was, yep, that would be the one we're talking about. 'Cause
And
you're
what's
right-
the driveway that's closest to it?
you can kind of see it right there. It's right where can you see the yes, that's a great indication of it. That's the driveway.
Okay, and that serves, what is that? What property does that serve?
I don't know. The property that it was
It's the tr-
subdivided from,
the
but
truck
I don't know what
terminal.
the use is.
So that everybody at home can hear that, there's a truck facility, a truck terminal that the driveway utilizes. See, nobody can hear you at home from there. That's all it's talking.
So back to your plan, how would your driveway? I'm just trying to figure out what that curve on the plan, how does that work?
We need an easement. So we would have, so where you can see at the top where the Dunkin' Donuts would exit, if you kind of were just to go straight to the road, then we would need an easement on the neighbor's property, which we would of course have as part of this. And then that would lead out. But because our driveway that we're proposing is so close to the other driveway, your regulations don't allow for that without a variance.
Okay, thanks.
Or, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Brennan? Commissioner Lampier?
Thank you. Just if you could clarify for me, it seems there is one means of entering the property, correct? For every business or building that's on that property.
Yes,
And to the right would be the, where you would go for the drive up, is that correct? And around the back of,
correct. That way, anybody using the drive-through wouldn't have to go through the parking lot. They could just go down and around the back of the building.
okay. But everyone else, at some point, everyone there, whether they're going through the drive-through or using the other buildings, would have to go out the same way.
No, you could go out because the one where the red dot was just at the top, it would be a right turn only. But anyone could choose to still go down to the bottom and
That
exit if they
lower.
wanted to take a left turn. That way, nobody's trying to pull an illegal U-turn somewhere or cause a dangerous traffic problem up to the top to the east.
Okay. And the exit that Commissioner Coop had just inquired about, how close is that proposed to the exit of the trucking facility next door?
It's sort of, it's not clear in the regulations how that's measured. Normally, the distance would be measured from throat to throat or the straight portion. And that is probably under, and I think your regulation is 40 feet. It's under 40 feet. I don't know the exact measurement. But then you can see that the curve, the radius really just pretty much wraps into the radius of the other driveway. So it's from that perspective, it would be zero distance between driveways. It is necessary, and the DOT, we did talk to the DOT about this. The existing driveway ramps up into the site and our site flows down. So there wasn't any way to make a connection into that existing driveway. So we had to, and for emergency services vehicles as well as loading facilities, this was the only option we had. And like Attorney Brennan said, that we did have a discussion with the DOT. We did talk about alternatives. The term was there were no fatal flaws in this design, and they were comfortable with what we were proposing. So our only issue is the definition of a 40-foot separation between driveways, which either way, we don't meet it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Brennan, Commissioner Mancini?
So the traffic on Plainfield Pike, is that an area that has a barrier in the middle, in front of the property? No. And then across from the thank you. Oh, okay, good. So there's a belly in the top corner of that property where Plainfield Pike is. There's a belly in the striping of the property, of the streets, that for traffic to make it go into one lane and then west, it opens up and goes back to 2 lanes. Would that be like negotiated with DOT for figuring out traffic patterns? Because if that's going to be the congestion of everyone coming into that area and crossing that double, does that make sense what I'm asking?
I think if I understand, you're asking if someone is waiting to take a left turn into the site, are other vehicles going to be able to get around them? And
Because
that
the
was a
striping makes it a
Right.
belly right there. It starts a
Yep.
belly to go around going
that
west.
we did discuss that with the DOT, and the DOT, in looking at the configuration of Plainfield Pike in that area, was comfortable that there was enough shoulder for vehicles to go around, particularly a truck waiting to turn into the site, but even a passenger vehicle, there's plenty of space for 2
Is it 2
vehicles.
lanes over there going west?
I think it's 1 lane going west, and then there's quite a bit of shoulder in that area. I don't know if you could, is it possible to zoom in
Supposed
on
to
that?
drive in the shoulder to go around cars.
Well, that's what they specifically mentioned, that was adequate. That was adequate.
Concern for people
Yeah.
driving to take a left to go into a Dunkin' Donuts in the morning, and then there's people going around illegally driving.
I guess well, I'll have to discuss that with the DOT when we go through the permitting process, but their initial read on it was that it was not an issue. If we need to stripe that out as a lane and have a smaller shoulder, that may be the answer with the DOT, but we'll get into that when we get into the DOT permitting.
Any other questions for the Duncan? project, Duncan Plus. Okay, let me just, see if there's any public comment. Is there any public comment on this project at this point? Here in the, room? Mr. Lim, is there anyone who'd like to make public comment on Duncan Plus?
There's no public comment online.
Okay. All right, any other further thoughts from anyone or the staff? Okay, I think we're all set. So the next step obviously is that you'll be submitting a zone change with some conditions in the near future. We will be making a recommendation at the appropriate time, and then best of luck dealing with the legislative branch.
Fantastic. Thank you guys very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us, so for everyone at home wondering how long this meeting will be, I'm hoping this meeting will be done by 8:30 at the latest. This brings us to our zoning board of review. Willow Properties. Is the applicant here and wishes to be heard on Willow Properties? Go ahead.
David Johnson, excuse me, haven't talked enough for a minute. David Johnson, I'm attorney for the applicant, William Hogan. I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we're seeking and what the business is that we're seeking the variance for. So Mr. Hogan owns Around Mobile Fencing and Storage. They lease out temporary fencing. So around construction sites, if you're driving around, you see big construction sites, those fences that are around them are oftentimes there, they have green placarded them. Behind those fences, a lot of times you'll see a gray container. They're typically used to store tools and things of that nature on sites. They're leased out to a number of different businesses. Retail stores, when they're doing renovations, will put their equipment in them and then pull them back out. The business is, they deliver an empty storage container. It's used by the client on the site. It's emptied out on the site, at the client's site, and then brought back to my client's business, empty, stored, and waits to go back out. So that's the portion of the business that we need a variance for. The zoning code, in an effort to not allow basically freight terminals and container yards, doesn't allow for the outdoor storage of containers. So that's what we're seeking a variance for. This business is a little bit different than that, in that the container itself is the item being stored. So that item would sit on the property temporarily until it gets leased back out. The business has been around for a very long time. They have a location in Providence. They have a location in New Hampshire as well. They're a well-established business in Rhode Island. They have 23 full-time employees. They lease the land that they're on now in Providence, so they're seeking to buy their own property, more or less control their own destiny from there. When it comes to the site itself, I don't know if you have the proposed site plan up. Yeah, so that when it comes to the site itself, this is the old Frito-Lay site on the corner of Stamp Farm Road. Conveniently north is up on this on this map. So these will be stored in the southeast corner in its own zone, down in its own little area down in the bottom right-hand corner of the site. That fits 84 containers. That would be if the containers are stacked 3 high. He never has more than about 50 containers on site, so that would exceed what he expects to have as maximum volume on there. The height of that stack is 24 feet. If stacked to full capacity, the building next door to it is about 27 feet high, and both of those are under the restriction. So it would be less than the height of the building. Directly to the south is a wooded area. I believe it's part of a drainage basin for the property to the south, and to the east is I believe it's a freight terminal. It's a van line. It's the bottom of their bottom left corner of their property. Where they have tractor trailers and things of that nature. There it is there, where they have those stored. So you can kind of see in the bottom right corner there, where those containers will be stored. They're pretty well away from the road. They don't have any real impact on any of the neighboring businesses. There's no residential uses in that area. So there's no impact on any kind of residential or abutting properties. And this would be, again, what the variance we're seeking is for. It's just to put those containers there empty while they're not being used. They get shipped out to their businesses and again come back. So he's been in Providence for over 30 years without any issue. And again, he's just looking to something that he owns.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? I'll start by saying thank you for coming to Cranston. If you're leaving Providence, It's a good move. Um, The, just so I understand is you store the containers.
So-
You're not the storage, you just store the storage
It's the
container.
container. So it's my client is Mr. Hogan. He unfortunately isn't back yet from the holidays. He's on his way back, but the containers are empty. They're not, there's nothing in them.
Right,
When he picks them up from his clients, if they're full, the interior, they have to dispose of those items on the client's property and they come back. They don't, there's an issue with obviously storing them, but there's a bigger issue with transporting them. They don't know what's in them. They don't have,
right.
hazmat transports, things like that. So they get transported empty.
So you're saying this is a use variance, which I'm always skeptical of use variances, so you know, but this one doesn't seem to bother me so much just because you're stating this is a use variance because we don't have, our code does not specifically allow for these types of empty storage containers?
So, yeah, and we had the same issue in Providence, actually.
Okay,
Because storage containers are typically, so having storage containers usually means you're gonna have a bunch of stuff in them, right? Like ready to go out on a freight somewhere. And that's a use that's, more suited for the Port of Providence or a rail yard or something like that. So
Okay.
that's what these are tailored to. Now, because they're shipping containers, and that is the product, we did run into that issue in Providence, and we ended up before that zoning board as well on, it was actually, that was a building official appeal, but we were successful in that. We understand that it's, use variance is not something I like to ask for, for obvious reasons. But it's a bit of an odd use and it's kind of hard to shoehorn it, but when you start seeing shipping containers, it's,
right.
you point to the code and where it says shipping container, it is what it is.
So Steve, Dave and I spoke at length about this, and again, what the city, what the point of the non-use would be the traditional, I'll call it terminal container port, where you had stacked of containers full of product
Mhm.
that causes a whole
Oh,
a
yeah,
host of issues, including fire, fire safety, access, all that, those type of things. So, Dave had two choices, either a zone change or a use, but this use is so unique,
yeah,
that I don't know if any town has a use for vacant containers, which is essentially what it is. So it's a little bit, different. So that's the use that we're prohibiting isn't really this use, although it's really the container of, that we're trying to avoid, a container port,
correct.
where trucks going in and out every day with full tractor trailers, et cetera.
Okay, I understand. Right. Any questions by Commissioner Lampier?
Thank you. Just to council, if these containers were empty and stored in a building, would it require a use variance?
I'd have to check with the building official.
I guess my question is that, is it because they are being stored out in the open?
It is definitely because they're being stored out in the open, but I can't give you the answer whether storing the containers in a building creates other issues that I don't know about, whether you're allowed to do that under some building code. I don't believe it would be a violation of the zoning code, but I don't know whether it's allowed. You just don't see it. So I'm assuming there's a fire safety issue regarding storing containers inside. Even if you go off 146 on the way to Worcester, you'll see the BJ's, the Costco, they have all those, centers, all those trailers, they never come in, that, they all park up and around, and then the warehouses, they move all the stuff inside. So the trailers do not go inside those facilities, but I don't know whether if you put a roof on it, whether that would be a use variance or not. I could check and certainly, what I'll do is I'll have the answer for the zoning board. That's probably the best
Thank
answer
you.
I can give you.
Any other questions? Okay. Mr. Ray, would you like to give your report and recommendation? And then we'll hear from public comment, if any.
All right, so as it has been discussed, it's a request for a use variance. This is a bit of a specific case, with the use being kind of unique. But, as you can see on the site plan, it's set back from the road. It's not too visible and as, I was gonna discuss, the containers, are below the maximum height of the zone, and also within the rear setbacks of the. So, in the schedule of uses, the container storage use is not allowed in any zone, but it is listed as an industrial use, showing that it matches with the character of the area, which is all industrial parcels. And as you can see, this use would fit right in here. So, positive recommendation to the zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Any questions for Mr. Ray from my colleagues? Quick question, Mr. Marcelo, was this type of use ever allowed as a special permit use in the city?
No, but that would probably be the best way to go about it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was gonna be, if I had done away, I did away with all special use permits in the city after some legislation.
Oh,
passed.
yeah. So
Yeah,
the
so I
answer,
felt, I was gonna say, I owe you
No, no,
anyway to
the-
approve it, so.
the answer to that is it was not a special use prior to us getting rid of all this.
Okay,
And I just saw, getting rid of all, I saw Mr. Sikarczy's assistant leave, but before us getting rid of all the special uses, this was not
oh, it's
a
not one of
special
them.
use, but it would kind of be,
Yeah.
it would be a good idea almost, because you would need separate, you need separation between containers and all that.
Exactly, okay. All right. Any further, Commissioner Lanfear?
Just a question to council. So in this instance, we are sitting as the planning commission, making a recommendation to the zoning board.
Correct,
not
on
sitting
the
as zoning
comprehensive
board.
plan.
So we are not, or we should not consider whether or not there is a beneficial use that could be made. other
That's the
than-
standard that Dave's gonna have to overcome next week, correct?
Okay.
It's just whether this, for lack of a better term, commercial, well, I'm not gonna make his argument for him, but this commercial use fits within the comprehensive
Comprehensive
plan
plan.
for this zone. I don't know if it's an M zone over there. Yeah, an M zone, whether this commercial use fits within the comprehensive plan for the M zone. And that's all you're doing, because you're making a recommendation on.
And we could add a condition.
Yeah,
that
suggested conditions
containers be
of,
Empty,
I-
that they be.
I would
more-
suggest, because this is what happened with, I'll call it the junk transfer facility behind CCAP, is you approve the transfer of scrap metal, and then it gets higher and higher and higher because there was no limit to the height. So one of the things I would suggest is a height limit to what the applicants proposed, which I think is 3 containers
Yeah,
high.
It was 3 high, and that was a condition we were certainly gonna mention that.
Yeah, so that way, we don't come back and, as they say in Narragansett, it's not this owner, but the next owner decides to put 7 containers high, et cetera. So that would be one of the conditions that I would suggest.
Any other questions for staff, council, or the applicant? Okay, first I'll do public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment on this zoning board recommendation? Seeing none, Mr. Lim, is there anyone online that would like to make public comment on this zoning board application?
There is no public comment online.
Okay, so last I saw, Mr. Ray, this is a positive recommendation, correct? Okay. I'll just make a quick comment before we turn it over. Basically, I am skeptical of use variances, but in this instance, it's basically an industrial use in an industrial zone, so I don't see much of a problem. And secondly, on the comprehensive plan, one of our goals is to attract capital. This is certainly, we're attracting capital, and I love attracting capital from the city of Providence. So I'm really happy you're coming here. Have you talked to the Economic Development Director, Franklin, yet? No, you got to meet him. So anyway, thank you so much. All right, any further discussions? Otherwise, the motion would be in order. Go ahead, Commissioner Lanfear.
I would move to accept staff recommendation, a positive recommendation with the following conditions: that the containers be required to be empty, that they contain no hazardous materials, that the height limit of stacked containers be no more than 3 containers in height, and that the number of containers be no more than 84 containers on site.
Okay. Does the applicant have any issue with those conditions? Okay. The motion has been made. Is there
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Renzulli? Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the positive recommendations with the conditions set forth by Commissioner?
Just
Commissioner
a
Barbera.
quick thought at the last second. When you stack them up, an empty container 3 high, would that cause any damage being emptied? Bad storm, something pushes them over, falling over, whatever. So I'm just thinking about the hazard of them being stacked up 3 high and empty with nothing in them, with no weight on them, and a possibility of something happening being stacked 3 high.
So the only answer I can give to that, again, because, you know, I don't operate the business, but they've been doing this for over 30 years. They're stacked 3 to 4 high in their current facility. They're trying to get it down to 3 to have easier, less equipment to get them down. So they haven't had any issues with them being blown over or any other issues, and they've always been empty. There's no weight or there's no ballast, I guess, for lack of a better term, in them as they're stacked now. And so they're in Tilsdusky Street in Holyoke. You can see them from junction of Route 10 and Route 6 off on the side of the road. As you went over in the past, they've never had any issues or incidents at their facility where it would be roughly the same operation, just in a bigger footprint.
Commissioner Renzulli.
What about, or should be done on site? Probably either.
So the cleaning of them is done off-site. It's really just, you know, there might be some trash or something like that gets worked out. The repair of them, I mean, it would be an industrial, you know, it's an industrial use. It would be, I mean, I would imagine just maybe some light riveting or welding or something like that. I'm not aware of but whatever they have, whatever they're doing there, most of these containers are new. And they're shipped as they get rusted out and start to age out. They're sold. If you look on Facebook Marketplace, you'll see that he's got a ton of them on there as they start to age out and he buys new ones. So they're not doing like heavy metals or anything like that. It might be some, you know, obviously some light repairs, not sanding and painting, doing that kind of stuff outdoors. Most of the repair stuff is limited to fencing. You know, basically, you think it's kind of like. Think of it as like mending a fishing net, you know, mending the wire. A lot of what but that is all kind of is part of that. Like industrial, I'm not sure, but you know, it's kind of part of the normal kind of business operation. They're not sandblasting, they're not painting, they're not manufacturing these things. What was explained to me was, you know, when they come in, typically, you know, they're either used to be released or they're used to be for sale. People buy these, you know. So these aren't kind of like rusted out hulks. If you see them around construction sites, there's one actually behind my office now on Post Road Warwick. They're generally speaking in pretty good shape. So I don't think there's any, whatever they're going to do there would fall within that M2 zone of business operations, probably certainly less than, you know, maintenance of trucks and things like that was happening as part of the Frito-Lay, you know, operation of maintaining the vehicles out of that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from anyone else? Okay, we were in the middle of our motions, unless someone has changed their mind and wants to withdraw their motion. Okay. Okay, I think the motion was a positive recommendation with conditions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you all.
Next is the city plan commission meeting schedule. I can talk about this. As you all know, we have regularly scheduled meetings on the first Tuesday of the month. By state law, we're supposed to post our regular meetings on the Secretary of State's website, and we schedule that. So these are the meetings that are the first Tuesday of the month for the remainder, for next year. So I just want to point this out. We'll have a vote on it. The only thing I would say is that the first Tuesday in November is election day, and 26 is an election year. So we could make a change there. Our former chairman would like to always change the date in November because he was an election worker and worked the polls. Therefore, we always like to change it. But other than that, if people have any issues with these dates, let me know. We can make a change now, including on the election day of November 3rd. Otherwise, a motion to, go ahead, Steve.
Is City Hall open on election day? Because it's a poll.
That's what I was gonna say, that City Hall is usually a poll. So probably out of an abundance of
I
caution,
mean,
we
you could
probably
post
should.
it this way and we could change it later, but I think
What? Does Commissioner Rosilli want is telling me something?
We might as well just change it now, so
okay,
to
all
do
right.
it.
Okay, is like, so anyone have a problem with changing it from election day? No, okay. Is like November 4th, okay? That's a Wednesday.
it's just if the chambers are available. Well, I mean, we could,
We could always change it when we get
because
there.
I think like tomorrow I gotta come to a council meeting and it's on a Wednesday, so I don't know if the council chambers are on a Wednesday.
Council chambers are, Commissioner Rosilli,
Yes, committees now meet on Wednesdays instead of Thursdays.
on Wednesdays and
We
Thursdays?
could do it the next Tuesday because that would be before zoning, which would be on Wednesday.
November the 10th then.
Whatever that
Okay.
is.
Hearing a desire to move it from election day for concerns related to whether or not City Hall will be open. And then moving into the next week in November due to concerns about whether or not this chamber would be available that week on Wednesday or Thursday. So being November the 10th. So, okay, is there any other dates people have a problem with here, looking at far ahead? Okay. Otherwise, we'll a motion to adopt this meeting schedule for 2026 with the amendment that it be November 10th rather than November 3rd. Commissioner Lampier makes the motion. Is there a second to Commissioner Lampier? Seconded by Commissioner Coop. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Okay. That's the schedule. Now, discussion of subdivision regulations. As all of you probably saw on the website, this thing's about 130 pages. Would the staff like to just come provide us with a general overview of the regulations and the revisions to them?
Yeah, as you may have seen on the agenda, we're not looking to do any votes today. This is mostly just for discussion purposes. We are hoping to potentially schedule a hearing for February to have these new regulations adopted. And we do need it is a public hearing, so we do need to schedule a public hearing. And just to do a very general overview of these changes, because we haven't really discussed them too much in depth. Most of these changes are from the 2025 Rhode Island General Assembly session. Specifically, there's this one bill, or I guess the House bill and the Senate bill together. That's where the majority of these changes come from. Plus, there's some smaller changes that are just like, cleaning up or clarifications stuff. And For the most notable things in this bill is, one is the oversized lot subdivisions, which for the most part will not go to this board unless there's a variance or a street extension involved. Those will be counting as minor subdivisions. If there's any questions on that, I can answer them for sure. A lot of the pre-application meetings, which were previously required for major land developments and subdivisions, are now optional and can only be requested by the applicant. So administrative officers and plan commission cannot make that requirement anymore. State permits have been moved for the final plan. So anyone hoping to have any permits in by the preliminary plan for a major subdivision or land development, state has required that move to the final plan. There's a movement of the expiration date for final plan approvals for major subdivisions, land developments. It is now 2 years instead of 1. I still believe it still includes the additional 2 one-year extensions that are by right. So there's also been some discretionary changes, and if you have the table, I kind of like itemized all the changes that we did. We clarified fees for the applications where we combined the review stages. A lot of this is just like smaller cleanup stuff. Besides the fees, I know we're discussing that at a later time too, as part of the zoning ordinance amendments. But we're actually still in the process of discussing fees. So we might actually come with a new proposal later on about how are we going to address the fees. DPR integration, and we're so currently discussing that right now as well. So that is not actively in this bill, but it might be depending on how we want to move forward with DPR. But we did integrate the design standards from the DPR ordinance. So if you go further back to the subdivision regulations, for some reason we had 2 sets of design standards. Some of them were in the DPR ordinance, and then there was separate standards in the subdivision regulations. Basically what we did is we took all the design standards from the DPR ordinance and then transferred and then copied them. Whatever was missing or conflicted, we then transferred to or added to our subdivision regulations. There's 2 additional changes that we're suggesting, which were brought in by city staff. One of them is a requirement for streetlights in all new developments. And then the other one is a requirement for underground water tanks for subdivisions without public water access. So basically anywhere you can't put a fire hydrant, we need to be putting in cisterns. Technically that was already like the fire department policy already, but now we're making it explicit in our subdivision regulations. So when people come in for development, they know that ahead of time. Yeah, and are there? Yeah. Are there any questions about this?
Commissioner Coop?
Can you explain where the streetlight requirement proposal came from?
That came from Public Works.
Yeah, so
And-
right now, streetlights are in the regulations, but they're only allowed if the city engineer requests them. And we've had subdivisions put in with no city engineer on staff. So we're changing them from being required by request to being required unless you get a waiver. So by default, they're now going to be required unless someone puts in writing that you don't have to put them in.
And who would be the one to put that in writing?
It's in either the city engineer or the director of public works. And this language request came from the Department of Public Works.
Okay,
I can find that.
I will wait till the Public Works Director is here to ask him more about that.
Well, there is some history about this. I mean, he's had lots of complaints from people on streets that don't have streetlights and wondering why their street doesn't have streetlights. And can they compel the developer to put in streetlights? And the answer was no, that we can't compel because our ordinances didn't require streetlights. Even though they have been standard practice in the city of Cranston. Most of our subdivisions have streetlights.
It was standard practice, but it hasn't been for quite a while now. And there's a argument why. So I'm curious I'll wait until the Public Works
Well,
Director is
actually,
here
I'd be
to,
curious to.
yeah.
Is
They're expensive. And
Exactly,
they
it's a
become the
cost.
city's expense to maintain and power forever and ever. And sometimes they're necessary, sometimes they're not. And to have a blanket requirement in every subdivision is gonna cost the city a lot of money. And they're not always worth the cost.
That's something I think you could talk to the Public Works Director about. And I think something too is, obviously if without getting into projects, like obviously certain projects with like 40 houses, 25 houses, I could see some need of a street light, but if subdivisions now were defined like 4 houses. Like I'm not sure
I
if
agree.
that's, I'm
And-
not sure they really knew, but I'd only
Yeah.
tell the Public Works Director, I'm
Yeah.
not an engineer, so, I don't.
But sometimes there's compartmentalized thinking. Oh, streetlights are good, so let's require streetlights without considering it from another perspective.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to talk to him about it.
We'll do a little more looking into criteria that might be appropriate for where streetlights are.
Yeah.
Because if it's discretionary, there's always criteria behind that, right?
Any other questions or comments? I'll have mine. I already spent 2 hours today with the staff on them. Well, I'll just say this before I ask a few more people. It's just, I spent a couple hours with the staff and generally, there's a couple of changes I requested that you'll see, and they're very minor. But just in general, I need to work a little bit. I was gonna say first, I wanted to make clear, and I think the regs will make clear, is that we have public hearings. We allow for public hearings for master plan and we allow public comment on preliminary plan. Just to make it clear so that we don't have these issues in the past where like in Bond Lane, the attorney's coming here arguing about whether or not he's even allowed to have, public comment and preliminary plan. Another thing I'm going to be asking the staff will look at, and I will work with the solicitor about, is this oversized lot section. I just want to see how that will be implemented and how that is exactly worded. Oversized lots is a state law. It may have, I understand how it would apply when everybody's in the same zone. Everybody's it's like 5,000 square foot lots in A6 zones. It's different. However, if it's an oversized lot, what they call an oversized lot, but it's basically because they're comparing themselves to lots in another zone next to it that's in a different zone. A20s, A80s, A8s, A6s, a mixture type stuff. And another thing I mentioned to the staff, and I'll ask the solicitor about, we don't need to get into it today, is we have a lot of requirements for what people have to give us for information. They have the water access, the sewer, the blah, blah. One thing I've thought, because we're in the planning world, is they should at least get some kind of information from the school department, whether or not there's capacity at the local elementary school for major projects. That's something that always comes up. And it's like, for some reason, we can't ask it, and there's some concerns, and I understand them. But if we can ask it legally, I think we should for major developments. We actually, in our regs, because I spent the weekend looking at these, I went to spend Sunday looking at this. Actually, you can phase in projects under our regs if there's a lack of facilities for police, fire, or school. That's what it specifically says. So I think knowing what's going on with the schools is important. There's an issue with the filing fees. we can get to that when we get to the ordinance section to talk about filing fees. But that was just kind of like my gist of it. So generally, I think it's in good shape. Hopefully, over the next few weeks, I know there's still a work in progress in regards to the development plan review committee aspect, whether or not that's going to be a zone thing or a regs thing, and I don't have a strong opinion about it. But once we get that finalized, we can probably move forward, probably early next year with some regulation revisions. Is there anything else anyone else has to, either questions or comments for the staff about these regulations? Commissioner Lanfear?
Just quickly, I did speak with Jonas today and we talked about trying to make, there's some areas on what is submitted where the wording, it's intended to be the same thing, but the wording differs a little. So it's kind of like a cleanup thing. And I'm not going to go into it now and waste everybody's time, but I'll continue to work with you on those so that we can just get them to be uniform. Substantively, the only other thing that I looked at and thought might be useful is under both master and preliminary plan, once there is an approval by the commission, it allows the administrative official to make a modification if requested to that approval. And it can either be a minor modification or a major modification. And on the minor modifications, it is at the sole discretion of the administrative official. And I think state law provides that as well. But my concern was just perhaps to put in there that it still remains the authority and the discretion of the administrative official, but perhaps with a consultation with the commission president. Because in many of those cases, the standard is whether or not the requested modification still meets the intent of the commission's approval. So it seems to me that there should be some representative of the commission, not that it has to come back to us, but at least a discussion with the commission president on what that modification is that's being requested, to give the administrative official more or less the sort of intent or opinion of the commission. So I just had language on both of those that I'll submit and you can take a look at, and we can certainly talk about it. It's not, as Steve said, the concern is always the next owner of the property. Well, here, I don't have any concern about our current planning director or that something is going to be done that we feel is untoward. But I think that it's just good practice that if a decision of the commission is going to be changed, there at least be a discussion and notification to the commission president about that issue before it occurs.
Interesting. If I may, the notification, it would be there's no other thing where we have consultation with a single member of the plan commission. The notification certainly seems very doable. And we, as you say, it's a matter of practice. We always get a second opinion. We consult with our legal counsel to make sure something's minor. So we try to be careful and not.
There's also that the section you're referencing also explicitly says that the administrative officer can consult the plan commission as well as part of the process for a minor change. So that is in the section. Yeah.
Because you could actually either you can consult with the council, you can consult with the commission as a whole, or provide notification to the commission. The commission, I mean, you can talk about with Commissioner Lanfear, but the most important thing is just notifying the commission that something is changing, and then I think that's number one. And then how I don't know how quickly these decisions are made. Obviously, like how much time you'd have for notification, like either it's you make a decision or after. But I think that's something you can work out with Commissioner Lanfear. We don't need to get into a whole bunch of details, and maybe you know, the solicitor can assist with that too, if there's something to work there. Commissioner Renzulli?
I don't know if this is an appropriate question at this time, but can you go back to the schools that you mentioned? Why is it that we don't have a school impact fee when other places do?
Okay. I think when you say other places, right? This is just me thinking off the top of my head. In other places, they are building new schools for more people moving to the town. So think of a rural community, right? Our two major school construction projects in the last decade was taking an old schools, closing them, and making new ones. Waterman Gladstone, Garlington I said it wrong, sorry. Garden City, Waterman, Arlington Gladstone. Personally, I think in the 1990s, we should have had impact fees for Hope Highlands and for Orchard Farms. I personally believe with all this blah, blah coming from over there at the school department about needing more school. I'm sorry, Tom, I don't mean to mean you, okay? I mean the superintendent, okay? But anyway, about the, it's actually this direction. The, you know, talking about, school construction, like if they're going to, like if we're going to make an extension at Orchard Farms, if they're going to build more schools in the western part of the city because of more population, then I think there needs to be some kind of school impact fee in some form or another for those new construction projects in the western part. It's harder to make the argument, I think, maybe the solicitor will tell me that I can, but I think when you're talking about just taking an old school and building a new one where the old school was, it's hard to show that the new people moving into town are the cause of the new school construction. But when you have new home construction occurring on the western side of the city, and let's say we had to build an extension to Orchard Farms, I think without question, I think that could be an argument there that there should be some school impact fee there.
Could it just be that, as obviously new construction is going to bring in more children on average, and if schools are at capacity,
Right.
as we've examined, we're going to eventually need a new school, so.
I know, this is probably something we can talk about some more, and I think we can do it with the staff. And then we can talk about other towns, how other towns do it. I just think in Cranston, I look at the impact fees we have right now. We have an impact fee related to libraries, police, recreation. There's something else I can't remember. Fire, but we don't have school, which is, to me, it doesn't make any sense to me why we don't have that school component when schools are usually the biggest infrastructure cost, and B, if I had to connect housing and schools, well, that's a clear connection when you're talking, especially in certain parts of our city. So, and we have verbiage from school committee meeting minutes about Orchard Farms being at capacity and Oak Lawn School being at capacity. So anyway, that's my response, Commissioner, the best I can off the top of my head, unless the staff has anything you want to add about school impact fees. Okay. But that's something we can talk about, and we can talk about. What I was saying in regulations is we ask all these things that we want, archaeological studies and this and that, but it's like, and nobody asks the school department whether or not they have adequate capacity at their local elementary school for a major project. It just boggles my mind why we don't. And I think I think the average person asks that question all the time. Like, what's the top? There's usually 3 issues that always comes up, and one of them is schools. So anyway.
So do we just have it's us that has the authority to do this?
We have the authority to put stuff in our regulations. Obviously, whatever we put in our regulations has to be permitted by law. Okay, so that's why I got to talk to the solicitor about what can we require require of applicants for informational purposes. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. Any other questions or inquiries or something else? Okay. All right, so the staff will continue to work on the subdivision regulations. All those who have further questions or concerns, feel free to talk to the staff about it. As this gets fine tuned, because I think we may be ready for some kind of, maybe January, certainly February, we should be in place to start having an actual draft that will go up to be noticed and stuff like that. Then we can go from there. Oh, before I leave, is there any public comment on these subdivision regulations? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone, someone's online now. Is there anyone online that would like to comment on the subdivision regulation drafts and discussion?
There is no public comment online.
Thank you. All right. Unless anyone has anything further, we'll move on to zoning ordinances. Before I hand it over to the staff, there's been a few things on the zoning ordinances, well, off the top of my head. Number one, we had an omnibus zoning ordinance that we recommended for submission. There was a snafu in the city council about the submission of the zoning ordinance. So now we will go to the administration next week to get the administration to submit it. So that's what's taken care of. I think there's 3 zoning ordinance issues. First is filing fee, inclusionary, and then DPR. So, Mr. Bergman, do you want to, okay, you want to do the fees? Let's, oh, good, I did it in order that's on the screen. Thank you. So let's start with the fees.
Yeah, I forget how much we talked about it at the last meeting, but basically, during the 2023 sessions, preliminary plan, the minor subdivisions kind of were separated between some that were have administrative review and plan commission review. Additionally, there was also unified development that was created during that time as well. Unified development, just, typically when we had 2 separate processes, now we have a single unified process. But it does require additional review from the staff to do that. Yeah, and before, so prior to 2023, basically any minor subdivision or land development also was reviewed by the Plan Commission. Now we have this kind of 2 separate process, but our fees have never changed to reflect that. So even though we have these multiple different processes that fall under a minor subdivision, we still have, the same base fee for those. So this is currently our proposal. As you saw, the previously base fee for all preliminary plans, which were $335 per unit. Proposal for this one, for this ordinance, was to kind of basically split it into those that require only administrative reviews for the preliminary plan and those that will go to the commission for review. So anything that goes to the commission for review is anything that requires a zoning variance or has a street extension. And if there's a subdivision which has, it's on an existing street, requires no street extension, and it's a by right project, then that would be administrative review for the preliminary plan. So this is our proposal for that change. Lately, though, we have also talked about another section in the subdivision regulations, which allows us to raise fees based on, I believe it was based on the amount that our budget increases. If I'm not correct. So there's also consideration to do that. And then I guess the other question too that was brought up to us was, I guess we wanted some clarification too about like, is this something the Plan Commission can actually approve or not?
Right. Sure.
I'd love to have all of these in the same place. I'd love to have our same fees.
Right, so, this thing. One issue, let me just start with the fees themselves. The fees you're seeing up there on the screen, staff confirmed, hasn't been increased since 2007. Okay, so that's 18 years. At the same time, the budget, this planning department staff budget has increased 44%. Inflation has increased 51% approximately. Okay, depends on how you calculate it. So these fees are pretty low compared to what I think they should be. And by the way, when you look at the amount of fees we collect, the planning department, when I mean we, the planning department, it doesn't even cover 20% of the budget of the planning department. And then from my conversations with the staff, I think they do more than 20% of their time is dealing with these applications in general. So I talked to Director of Administration Moretti about this issue because obviously this is an issue that's fiscal, has fiscal impacts and stuff. And I talked to him about the fact that it had an increase since 07, that the planning department's budget's gone up 44%. And what he thought, and he said, you know, to me was, 25% increase he felt was justifiable and hard to argue it. So he was a little bit lower than I originally thought myself. Like he felt better with a 25% increase, I'll say that. And so I usually like being part of the executive branch, I usually like working with the executive branch about these issues. The second thing, and that may get the solicitor involved here, was, as you see, this is developed as an ordinance. And we did that after a conversation with the solicitor and the staff. And then I was looking at it over the weekend and I found a state law, and this is like goes back to Bob Murray's questions all the time, but where do we get the authority for these fees? And I found 45-2358, which says local regulation adopted pursuant to this chapter, and this is a subdivision of land, may provide for reasonable fees and amount not to exceed actual costs incurred to be paid by the applicant for adequate review and hearing of applications, issuance and permits and recordings of subsequent decisions. So I took that as that we do have the authority to set fees. We don't need to go to the city council and have them do an ordinance. So my suggestion would be is that out of an abundance of caution here, we just, when we do our draft regulations, put the fees down, the fee structure you want, and just increase it by 25% and just get the public to say what they got to say. If Bob Murray wants to flip out about it, he can flip out about it. Bob's not here. Maybe he's at home listening. I'm sorry, Bob. But I'm only saying this is that it's pretty clear to me, we are not covering the costs of reviewing these applications. And a 25% increase when nothing has increased since 2007, I think is justified. And you're talking about from $100 to $125. I don't think these things are going to be breaking the bank, and I don't think we need to go to the city council with a separate ordinance if we have statutory authority to approve fees. And these are fees that we have in our regulations already. So that's just my 2 cents. If the solicitor feels very strongly that I'm wrong on this, I always appreciate people who have a difference of opinion with me, but that's what I thought. Is there any other comments about these fees or thoughts about it? And so that means I wouldn't want the fees to increase automatically on January 1st by 44% or 25%. We just put the regulations in, we'll notice it, and we'll see what people have to say. You know, if they want to say it's too much or whatever it is, but I think we're on solid ground, by the way, if having no fees increase in 18 years. And this doesn't even cover 20% of our budget. So Anyway, any Commissioner Lanfear?
Just when you read the statute, it did say fees that reflect actual costs. So could we have almost like, as the legislature attaches a letter of explanation or something to their bills, could we have something from planning staff that establishes that these fees reflect actual costs and why? So that if they're challenged,
Right.
asked to why we did that.
Sure, I think they can. I mean, it says here not to exceed actual costs. And I think, like I said, we already have one line, which is these fees would not constitute more than 20% of our budget. So I think the staff could easily testify to that they spend at least 20% of their time on all these applications. If the staff would like to come up with some estimates of how long it takes them to, review master plan, preliminary plan, all these things, you could try to come up
And
with
there,
some
there
estimate.
is certainly a range. Some projects come in real clean and are easy to review. So it'll be an average.
And I think that it wouldn't surprise me, let's say, like for example, a pre-application concept, CPAP, would be $125. That's like Steve Marcello's legal fees cost $125 at least an hour. I mean, it's just like there's cost to all this stuff.
Just me getting up costs you more than that. So the only issue I have with planning commission setting fees is for unified development. So it's not in this fee schedule, but unified development includes zoning fees. So
Right.
which under 4523, you're not allowed to set zoning fees.
Correct.
So are we going to have to go before the council to set a separate I can't see that, but
I think,
separate unified development?
I think what they did here, Steve, is they're treating unified development as if you're asking for a master plan or a preliminary plan. They're just treating it. Is that what you guys are doing right now?
Yeah.
So-
The new division between administrative review and.
Yeah, because
Review from the
in your
plan
fee
commission.
schedule, I didn't see unified development.
Correct.
Fee.
We chose to not make that a
So-
separate fee in our proposal.
And what about the zoning fees? Like
We would-
if you come for a straight zoning variance for a sign, it's not, are we going to do a separate fee schedule for
Mm,
that?
No,
We're
if they
gonna
come to
keep
the
it the way it
plan
is?
commission, they'll just pay the plan commission review fee for the, major or minor project that it is.
So I'm a practitioner, I come in, my client says, how much is a unified I'm filing for unified development because I have a 2-lot subdivision with zoning relief. What does that cost me? Like, I don't see that anywhere.
Right here on the screen. Sorry.
So we're technically, so this is only for so by the way, this is only for minor subdivisions. Yeah. So this is our. But. Correct. Correct.
That's
So
what-
the way
that's what
we
she's
kind of
saying.
handled that difference is for minor subdivisions is anything that comes to the plan commission. So that includes unified, but it also includes street extensions. Technically, either of those require more staff time in our opinion and require more of your time because you need to be at the commission. We could.
You're asking the
Street
clarification,
extension
right?
unified, yes.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We
No,
could put an
that's fair.
asterisk at the bottom and say there's no additional fee for unified development review.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, Commissioner Coop.
I want to go back for a minute to the analysis of the state law, how it's tied to the actual cost of the review.
Mhm.
Are we sure that we can average? We're talking about the amount of time that staff spends reviewing all of these plans.
Mhm.
Is it not tied to the individual application? Because if someone comes in with a 4-unit, they pay $250 plus $42 per unit, and someone else comes in with a 200-unit project, now they're paying almost 200 times as much. Is their project requiring 200 times as much work? And is that going to be an issue? Are we allowed to aggregate all of the applications? Or do we have to look at the expense of assessing each application individually?
So we are supposed to have a flat fee and not charge people by time reviewing their project. We're not supposed to send them a bill that's based on actual time.
So do we
spent
have to
reviewing their
revisit the
project.
per unit cost?
Right, we had so is your question about whether the per unit, the extra plus 35 as it stands there? I agree with you that after a certain scale, it doesn't take that much more time to review 100 units than 50. You're already talking about a major project. So there is
So
there
does
is a
that-
sense that it doesn't.
Is that going to run into an issue with reliance on this state law?
To me, actual costs incurred to review, you're gonna have like you're gonna be looking at the projects in general, like a category, okay? Like, let's say preliminary plan review, city plan commission, okay? When I look at $400 plus 35 units, that's the average cost of that type of project.
It's less than the average.
So
cost, but yeah.
so let's say that's it. So there could be a project that comes in, that's that fee is a little bit higher for them than it should be. But for other people, it could be less.
So that's my question, is
We
your
have to go by ca-
interpretation of that state law, does it allow you to aggregate all of these?
It has to, otherwise we'd be billing, the planning staff would be like attorneys billing by the hour. And that's not what this is set up to be.
Okay, but just looking at it from the developer's point of view,
Yeah.
a developer with 200 units might come in and say, well, why am I paying 40 times as much as this developer with 5 units? Shouldn't it be tied to the cost of reviewing my project?
Yeah, I mean, an economist might say that the per unit cost should decrease as it gets larger.
I don't think this, by the way, Commissioner Coop, I'm not an expert on fee structures across the state, but from my understanding from the conversation I had previously with the director, is that our fee structure is in the middle of the entire state. So I don't think what we have here is abnormal.
I agree. I don't think
Okay.
it's abnormal. I'm just
Right.
trying to think about potential
Right. I mean, but like,
pushback.
Yeah,
right there,
and-
somebody could say anything about like, it doesn't cost you so much, you're overcharging me for this and you're overcharging me for that. But in the end, you have to come up with an average. Right? And when you see this thing and it hasn't been increased in 18 years, I have a hard time seeing, and this would compensate, this would cover maybe less than 20% of the staff's expenses. I have a hard time seeing how this doesn't correlate in some way to actual costs.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, one developer coming in and looking at the fee versus another developer and saying, I'm paying 40 times as much as this other developer. How is this tied to the cost of reviewing my plan?
And see, even if a developer came in and said, all right, $400 times 35 units, this doesn't cover the amount I'm being charging me is excessive of what it takes you is excessive compared to this other guy. I'm not sure that this $40 times $400 times 35 per unit covers the whole cost of reviewing an application by the staff. I don't know. They take some time with these things. You know, when you factor in their staff, you know, the compensation in the sense of salary, benefits and other things, I don't think it's gonna be easy for them to show that, you know, we're overbilling them. Commissioner Manzulli?
Just as an example, we can look at what other cities and towns do, but North Kingston gives a flat fee and then $10 per residential unit or 1,000 square feet of commercial space. So that could be a way to do it as well.
Yeah, so they do it have a per unit basis like we do. And they actually even have a square footage basis.
Also do, for commercial and industrial developments, the fee indicated above shall be assessed per developed acre or per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area, whichever is greater.
But looking at that example, the base is much higher and the per unit is much lower, which sort of evens out for the distinction between a small project and a large project. So they're on more of a level playing field.
Like I said, I mean, I wasn't here obviously in 2007 when they did the analysis to do this, and probably and that 2007 was probably going back even further. My feeling is, when I look at this, Commissioner, is do other cities and towns have a similar structure? My belief is yes. Is this structure out of line with other cities and towns? I don't believe it is.
And again, I agree with you. I'm just posing the question whether this would stand up under the state law.
Yeah.
And you seem to, you know, pretty confident it would. I'm not hearing from our solicitor that it wouldn't, so
No,
just raising the question.
No, and I understand, and Council Murray will show up and tell me why I'm wrong and all this other stuff. But I think that I think we are on solid legal grounds to implementing the fees. We can argue about the level of the fees, how they're structured, but when I see them as consistent with other towns, and I see that we haven't raised them in 18 years, I don't think I think it's hard for someone to argue that all of a sudden what we did was raise the fees dramatically and and it's not justified. That's me just as a layman saying we're raising at 25% that haven't been raised in 18 years and doesn't even cover 20% of the cost of the staff department. That's me. But we'll see.
We'll see.
But Bob Murray
Yeah.
will say something at some point. Anything else? All right. We got the next one on the zoning ordinance list, and we'll do public comment on all the zoning ordinances in a minute. Inclusionary zoning?
My bad. Inclusionary zoning basically adds a requirement to the zoning ordinance for multifamily housing projects with 10 units or more to include at least 15% of deed restricted low and moderate income housing in accordance with the amendment to the Low and Moderate Income Act of 2025, so this last session. And our reasons so far are, one, it's a response to this amendment in the section. So what you did is, for one, it removed the rental exception for comprehensive permits, thereby making the Cranston subject to these comprehensive permits starting January 1st. And basically the only way you can get exemptions to these comprehensive permits is if a municipality has 10% of its housing stock be considered affordable under the LMIA Act. And basically meaning 10% of your housing units have to be either deed restricted affordable housing, Section 8 vouchers, or the mobile home, like a combination of mobile home units, Section 8 vouchers, and deed restricted affordable housing. And you need to have inclusionary zoning implemented as well. And additionally, we think that implementing inclusionary zoning could help the city reach and sustain its affordable housing goals, which should help monitoring the rising cost of housing in the city. And it will also be part of the affordable housing strategy, the housing then element for the 2026 comprehensive plan. And, oh, it is actually, never mind. It was in the 2020, so the current comprehensive plan we have recommends inclusionary zoning as part of its housing element strategy. And will likely also be a strategy for phase 2.
Okay, go ahead, Director, if you have something.
Just say there are a number of choices that we have in constructing this ordinance. It'll be very important to get comment on it.
Okay, so as I said last month, I thought generally it was okay. I need to talk to the administration. I need to talk to the administration about this in detail so they understand it before we make any kind of vote on it, in my view. So I have not had the chance yet to talk to the administration about it. So that's my sense. But overall, what it requires and what it doesn't require, I think is okay. And in general, so that's my 2 cents for right now. Did my colleagues have anything? Go ahead, Director. Commissioner Rizzuli.
I just have a question for Attorney Marcella, I think. As far as having 10% affordable units, does that have to be built, constructed, people in them, or we could have approved them? Because it takes time for things to be built. But if we have, 200 approved affordable housing units kind of in the pipeline, do we not
The answer
qualify?
to that question in terms of how they account for affordable units is they have to be built. And then they'll show up in the tally the next year.
So that could take many years
Well,
to happen.
at the end, at each year, the state does a tally verifying the affordable units and how many we get credit for. So sometimes units get taken off the books too, because maybe their limitation expires because they were only guaranteed affordable for a certain number of years, so they come off the books that way, or maybe something's demolished or changes. So it is a dynamic list, and that is part of the thinking of why you need to require 15%, even just to hold steady to not lose ground against the affordable units you have in you have
Because
credited to the city.
we can only approve them. We can't make anyone build them. So even if we made it 40%, if they didn't build them, then we're still kind of held accountable.
That is a really good point, and that's one of the key changes the state legislature made, is they allowed us to bring that percentage down, because there's thinking that if you make the affordable requirement too high, you suppress construction. So what is that sweet spot? It's we've addressed this in here. The state asks us to have some incentives for the affordable units. We've put in the text here that there'll be a bonus unit density that they could have for each affordable unit that they're providing. So that density bonus is our subsidy. And that's what's proposed here. There are other forms that the city could choose to offer an incentive to support affordable housing and make it easier for developers to make it financially feasible.
Any other questions? Commissioner Coop or comments?
Just practically, what do you do with a 10-unit development? 15% of a 10-unit development, is that 1 unit or 2 units?
That is actually in the draft. It's specified in the language. I
think it's a round-upper, isn't it? Yeah, it's a round-up. I originally thought it should be 15, because it kind of makes it kind of easier, I think. It's like, just get it. But
I agree.
Yeah.
Actually, I think 10 is, I
understand.
struggle with this, but 10 is a pretty small development to be imposing an affordable.
So it's standard in Massachusetts to require the 7th unit to be affordable. So 10 does not strike me as particularly.
So
low
in
and low.
Massachusetts, 7 triggers
Every
the
7th
affordable
house. Yes.
requirement.
And and I haven't seen it limited just to multifamily. So this is a fairly limited approach to inclusionary zoning ordinance because most of the housing development in the city has been single family, and we're excluding that entirely from this ordinance. So it's only going to apply to the multifamily, and it's
And there's no circumstance where a development would be exempted from this.
I think under the ordinance, it doesn't say there are exemptions, but this is, we could talk with this with the solicitor, is they could ask for a waiver. I mean, like sometimes they, we have things in our ordinances, like for example, like flood zone stuff and this thing. I noticed like sometimes they ask for waivers sometimes. So I don't know if a waiver could be requested of a particular project. The example you're probably thinking about that occurred to me too is Printworks. If this thing had been in place with Printworks, this Printworks wouldn't happen,
It wouldn't happen.
period.
And so you could think of putting in criteria where we could waive it if, there were extraordinary development costs because of historical structure. We could think of reasons why something might get a waiver.
And this is one of the things like I have to talk to the administration about, because that's one of the concerns that has been expressed to me about like, this is, it's a double-edged sword. I'll phrase this, and I don't want to offend anybody's feelings about it, okay? But it's a double-edged sword, which is like you have to have a requirement, but that requirement comes with a cost. And then it may not get built at all if you impose that cost, which is the Printworks example.
I don't think you disagree. Nobody is more concerned about affordable housing than I am, but
Right.
I agree with you. It's not going to work in every project. And I think we do need some flexibility.
Yeah, and so I wonder if like a waiver provision could be put in there, but if we just have to have it structured, I don't know if it's open-ended or narrowly tailored. And I don't know if it's how much latitude we have under state law, which is questions we could probably talk to the solicitor about. But that's something this is still a work in progress, and it's, like I said, I gotta talk to the administration anyway. And the staff, we can talk about in the solicitor. Any other questions or comments for the staff on inclusionary zoning? Okay, last zoning ordinance, and then I said I'll have public comment on it. DPR, this is still whole
I don't
thing
have an
about-
additional slide for this. This is still something we're still discussing with the solicitor, so.
Right. And this is the whole issue about whether or not it should be in the zoning ordinance or in the regs, basically, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then we can leave that to another day. You guys can keep.
Yeah, we're gonna have.
Yeah,
a
okay.
discussion
we're
about
not on the depth of development plan review, so I leave it. Sometimes I think if it's not broken, don't fix it, you know what I mean? Let's see.
It might be broken.
It might be broken, okay. Let's see. Oh, before we go so you've, anything else from my colleagues, questions or comments on those three ordinance things? All right, is there any public comment on the ordinances that we've been considering? Please come forward.
Good evening, Annette Bourne, 51 Community Drive. So I just want to offer to the commissioners that there is an extensive body of work on what I will call inclusionary housing. It goes back to the 1970s, New Jersey. The intention here is fair share, and the intention of the word inclusionary is to ensure equitable distribution of affordability and a decrease in racial segregation in the United States. There is a website, inclusionaryhousing.org, if you want to consult that. But in addition to that, there's just extensive body. If I were a developer here, I would be telling you this is not a great strategy. You set it at 10 units, you set it at 40 units. I'm going to give you 9, I'm going to give you 39. So it is a double-edged sword, as President Frias described. I'm here, to support affordability. So I greatly appreciate that we have been able to actually get 15% in a number of the developments that are on the drawing board. So what I would really suggest, and I don't mean to derail all of the really hard work that the staff is doing, yeoman's work. But given that the exemption regarding the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act is twofold, right? The city needs to achieve its 10% low and moderate income housing, which, as we've observed, we are over 1,200 units short of that. So if the intention of this is to meet both of the goals of the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act in order to gain that exemption again, I think this is putting the cart before the horse. Although I do want to see all of these units include affordable units. The fact that we are hitching this only to multifamily, if our city included multifamily zoning from east to west, I would see that as an equitable approach because it would have as much chance of gaining affordable units out at Orchard Farms as it would in my neighborhood of Parkview. As it is, we don't have that kind of zoning citywide. So unless we apply this to single family subdivisions as well, we are not going to achieve the inclusionary aspect of what this law in its spirit is actually meant to achieve. So thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments here today on this, on zoning ordinances, on ordinances related to zoning? Okay. Is there anyone on public online who would like to comment on these ordinances?
There is no public comment online.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lima. Okay, next item is comprehensive plan amendments.
We are working on the housing element. That is our first priority. We do have one additional workshop scheduled that's in January, but that's open space and recreation. And we intend to come back at the January meeting with a timeline of how we intend to complete the comprehensive plan next year. It has been a struggle actually to give it the time it takes with other competing opportunities, but we're going to make this happen. But I am going to ask that the public hearing be continued to January.
The one before we do that, just one thing I already spoke to the director about is I will be asking the director to continue to work on the housing element in particular this next month, so that hopefully we have a more robust draft to talk about in January. I do still see a need to move this along as quickly as possible on the housing element for a variety of reasons. And certainly I can spend some free time in December looking at whatever the draft the director has ready. Yeah, so when's the next meeting? January 6th. Is there anyone that have any questions for the director on comprehensive plan amendments? Commissioner Renzulli?
The open space recreation element, if that is finished, will that go forward before the housing or do they all have to go together? How does that work exactly?
I think it's really kind of like up to us how we want to do it. The open space recreation, the question is whether or not we want to vote on it and then send it to the commission, send to the council as like an amendment, really, at this point. Because we're gonna have an open space event in January, are we not?
Yes.
Right, so
And if I can make a request, I'm going to send out the handout and I'd really appreciate it if you'd circulate it to people. And I'm also interested in people, if they're individuals who think that the planning department should reach out to for informational interviews to help inform that element. We'd love to have that kind of input or invitations to groups that we should be speaking to. Definitely grateful for any input from the commission on how to help enhance our public outreach rather than just putting out a notice about a workshop, but really be more targeted in our outreach.
Well, like I was gonna say, Commissioner Mazzilli, because we're having an event in January, probably it makes some sense to hear from the public first, see what they have to add to the element that's already been revised. And, you know, more revisions may be needed, and then probably after that, we could probably like, okay, we've gotten some input from the public, maybe we can have a vote on this now revision, you see? But I
Yeah.
think the vote would be after, at this stage, we could have maybe had a vote in September, but at this stage, we should probably just hear from the public, people come out, and then we can revise and then make an adoption.
I agree. I just meant, does it, if the housing takes longer, will the recreation go first, or are
What-
we waiting to do them together?
I can talk to the director about this. It's like some elements can go quick and some elements take long. And I don't think we need to, last time, if I don't remember this now with former director, we were approving, we were actually kind of like tentatively approving elements. Like we're all set with this element and we move on to the next one. And then we had like a vote on all of them together. You know what I'm saying? And so I think we're probably like trying to do this as we move along. We're going to take care of these, then we take care of these, and then we wrap it all up and send it along. I think something like that, you know. Anything else from my colleagues on the comprehensive plan amendments? Okay. I got to do public comment first before I do motions. Is there any public comment here that would like to be heard on comprehensive plan amendments? Seeing none. Is there anyone online that likes to have any public comment on comprehensive plan amendments?
There is no public comment online.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lima. Okay, now would be the appropriate time to motion to continue this matter to January 6th of 2026. Moved by Vice Chairman Coop, seconded by Commissioner Mancini. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. All right, Director, your time.
Stay, does it? So I've passed out a written director's report as my per usual. I think important things is we have the signed agreement with Kittleson and Associates, and we'll be doing our kickoff meeting on our TOD zoning work in January. So when we get a date, I'll be sharing that with you. I've also worked with the Rolf Square Merchants on an application for the Main Street Learning Cohort, and the decision was made that Edgewood and Knightsville wanted to be included too. So we're putting in a Main Streets of Cranston application to participate in that learning cohort. And the city planning department will be participating along with economic development from the city. We've had some conversations on city energy efficiency with Rhode Island Energy and RISE. And we had a very successful floodplain easement. I don't know whether you're all aware of this, but we received violations from the federal government that we had some debris in our floodplains that we own. And so the city plan department went out with the Patuxent River Water Authority. We pulled 44 tires and a pile of other stuff out of the confluence. But it also brings up a larger issue. This kind of cleanup task does not align well with the city departments. I mean, it's fun to do once, maybe we'll do it again, but I can't clean up all three of these floodplains. And we might want to open a conversation about, how could we have these properties owned and managed by an organization whose mission includes land conservation and stewardship. These are three properties that were acquired with floodplain grants that our former planning director, Peter Lapola, brought in. But yes, I just bring that to your attention. And then finally, we went to the Regional Planning Association Conference and was able to present on TOD and the joys of trying to succeed while state laws are changing under your feet.
Thank you, Director. And the other thing I just note is the Director, I think you post either online, you send us administrative office, what do you call them? Administrative officer reports. So every month, the administrative officer is Director Ashman, and she'll be listing all the things that have been approved or not approved, what happened in the past month, because some of the things just she deals with, we don't. So you get to see that. If there's any questions about something she's approved, feel free to give her a call and talk about it or anything like that.
Yeah,
But that's, I think it's a helpful thing to get every month.
It's a long enough list that I don't want to read it into the record, but I think going forward, I'd like to attach it to the minutes so that it becomes archived with the Secretary of State.
If the city solicitor tells me that's okay, we can do it. If the city solicitor tells me it's not okay, I can't do it. So I assume it's okay, but we'll find out.
Can we attach the administrative officer report with the minutes?
Yeah, so, okay. That's fine. Well, we're not gonna do that to the future people of Cranston to read about, yeah. Okay, that's fine. And we could probably do that up front when we do approval of the minutes and inclusion of the administrative officer's report.
That sounds good.
Yes, that's right.
We're trying to increase transparency.
Yep. Okay. If there's anything further or questions for the director, if not, for my colleagues, as you all know, we're not done yet this year. We have a December 9th meeting at Natick Solar. Will be the next one. So there's nothing else. A motion to adjourn would be appropriate.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Commissioner Renzulli, seconded by Vice Chairman Coop. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and 8:24.